We are interviewing members of the family to know what life was like in the early 1943s. So we have a few questions for you. The first one is, what did you use to stay alive with?
What did we use to stay alive with?
Yeah.
Well, I grew up in the country, so we had a small farm and had vegetables. We grew our own vegetables. We usually had a few pigs, and we would slaughter a pig, butcher a pig, and we always had venison, deer. We would hunt deer in the wintertime. And we used wood for heat. We burned firewood, not only for heat but for cooking for a few years, and then we got a kerosene stove in the kitchen, so that we cooked on kerosene heat. But let's see, we used we didn't have a lot of outside income. In other words, my grandparents did not work outside of the home. They stayed and worked on the farm, and it wasn't a big farm with a lot of animals, but we had a few animals, a lot of chickens and so on. So we had vegetables and meat, and we canned a lot of food to keep it over the summer.
What was life like when you were our age?
What was life like when I was your age? Well, for me, it was it wasn't real happy, but as I said, we lived in the country, and in the summertime there wasn't a whole lot to do because I didn't have a lot of close neighbors, so we didn't have friends to play ball with or things like that. At your age, I did a few years later, but not then. And so in the summertime, I'd go up in the woods a lot, or I had chores, taking care of the garden, and it was mostly work. Really not much time for play. Go ahead.
What was your house like? Did y'all sleep on beds? Or did y'all have an outdoor bathroom? Did you take a bath in the same bath? And what did you use for cooking?
Okay. When I was first born, we lived in a little tiny place, really out in the woods, and at that time we did have an outdoor bathroom, but I was too small to use it anyway. But when I was your age, our house was it was a two-story house. Actually, there was an attic even, if I remember correctly, but there was mainly 2 stories. There were rooms upstairs. I had a bedroom I slept upstairs part of the time and downstairs some of the time when we reconfigured things. So yeah, we had beds, and of course I lived way up north, so it was cold during the winter time, and so we put on a lot of huge, blankets and quilts and all of that sort of thing just to stay warm, because our house, we didn't have heat that was on during the night once the wood in the fire burned out. So, but in the summertime everything was real comfortable. You could open a window and hear the birds sing and the crickets chirp, and have fresh air, and it was great.
What about the cooking and bath?
The bath, we had an indoor bathroom, of course, and a bathtub, not a shower. And so up in those days, up north, we didn't take baths every day. We sort of took one when we had to. And of course, later when I got into school and played sports, I was, we had showers available. But we had a shower in our house then. But when I was younger, yeah, we took a bath, and Let's see. As far as cooking, I've already mentioned is just a wood stove in the beginning, and then a kerosene stove in the kitchen, and all the meals were prepared right there. No frozen dinners or any of those kinds of things.
Did you salt foods to make them last long?
Did we salt fruit?
No, did
Salt
you
food?
put salt on foods to?
Some of the way that some of the foods were preserved was with salt, a salt brine, salt and water, and you put it in there and it'll keep it from spoiling, the way that ham is done today. But a lot of times you just take the air out of you put them in glass jars, canning jars they call them, and you put them in glass jars and just put them down in the we call it a cellar, it's now called the basement, but underground where it's quite a bit cooler.
What about refrigerators? Did you have any of those?
We had a refrigerator, yeah. I think probably from the time I was 8 or 10 years old, I guess. Probably younger than that, but I don't remember.
So was that when they first came out?
Yeah, they were pretty crude at that time. I don't know when refrigerators were first developed, but I suspect probably in the 30s. I know that the early ones had a block of ice that kept everything cool. We had an electric refrigerator at one point, so. But I don't remember too much about how that looked.
Did the refrigerator work better than it does now?
No, nowhere near. It didn't really. You couldn't really regulate the temperatures all that well, and so it worked, but it didn't work very well. Technology just wasn't that good.
Did you have chores? If so, did you play?
Well, I think I talked about that. I used to be the gardener of the family. I had to weed the garden. My grandfather did much of the planting, although we all pitched in to plant, and I pulled the weeds all summer long. Took every weed out of that garden many times over, I think. And then during the rest of the year, my job was cutting firewood, wood that we had to set aside for the winter. And so I did that with what we called a buck saw. It was a little frame like this that looked like an X, and you lay the wood across here, and then cut it with a saw, a single person saw. And it was a lot of work. The bigger chunks you split with a sledgehammer and wedge, and sometimes with an axe, but usually with a sledgehammer.
When did you get your first kiss?
Get my first kiss? Gosh, I don't remember. Must have been probably 12 years old or something like that. Yeah. Is that part of the scheduled interview? Yeah? Okay. All right. Just wondering.
Did you have any chores? Which was your favorite chore?
What was my favorite what?
Chore.
Chore? Gosh, most of the chores that I had, and I forgot about cleaning out the chicken coop and all of those things that weren't a lot of fun at all. I guess probably of all of the chores I had, probably feeding the animals was about the most fun, I guess, yeah.
Which did you think was easier, the saw to cut wood or the axe?
Which was my favorite tool to use?
Yeah.
Well, I liked using the axe, but you didn't use it to cut the lengths of the wood into lengths, because it just wasn't very efficient at all. So you used a buck saw for that, but then you split pieces of wood that were real big, big ones, you'd make them to about this size so that you could burn them in the stove.
What was your school like?
My school, interesting, yeah. It was, when I was your age, I went to a school that was built in the 1700s, and it was red brick, one room. And at one time, when I first started going there, in the first and second grade, I believe it was, all 8 grades went to that one school, and we were all in that same room, the first grade through the 8th. And at the 9th grade, of course, they went to high school in another town. We didn't have a high school there in that town. The school had outside toilets, and that wasn't very nice, but we had for years a big stove, huge stove, round thing in the back of the room, and we kept the classroom relatively warm that way. There was a blackboard and small desks, and that was about it. So we had coat racks lining up on one of the walls and windows all along one side. But that school is on the I think national list of historic buildings now. So it's has quite a history.
Did you eat good?
I'm sorry?
Did you eat good food?
Yeah, our food was good. I mean, we grew it ourselves or caught it or raised it, but it was pretty good. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't, we certainly didn't have fast foods like McDonald's and those things in those days, but, and like I said, no frozen dinners, the TV dinners that you pop in the microwaves. Of course, we didn't have microwave ovens either. So, the food was good. We made our own bread, and sometimes we made our own butter and cheese and stuff like that. But a lot of it was just what we grew or made.
Okay, I'm gonna skip. What did you eat? Because you already explained that in the beginning.
Okay. Yep. We didn't eat much sweets either, by the way.
Thank you for your help, and I hope you liked it. I have one more question.
One more question, okay.
Did you have a TV?
After, I guess when I was about, it must have been 1950 at least, when my dad bought a TV. And although we didn't live with my dad and mom, we lived with our grandparents. But he brought the TV over, and we had it at our grandparents' home. And so I guess I was probably about maybe 10 years old when I first got to watch TV, 7 or 8 anyway, at least.
What was your favorite show?
Well, there weren't many shows on at that time, and I think one of the shows that was on was like Lassie or one of those. There was very little TV programming, usually from about 7:30 until 10 at night, and that was it, So there just weren't that many shows on, and so the TV was not broadcast. I mean, the TV stations didn't broadcast around the clock, 7 days a week like they do here. A lot of times they wouldn't even start broadcasting until noon or later, and most of the programming was in the early days, 7 to 10 at night or something like that.
Did you have any news on your TV?
Did you have any what?
Like news, like news that tells about the ABC News, sort of.
Oh, they there was a news show that started pretty early, and but never local news. It was always the network newscasters. So that was the TV watching was very limited.
What was your favorite thing to do back then?
Well, I think my favorite thing to do was to hunt and fish. And then about the time that I was about 10 years old, I discovered baseball. Of course, I knew it, knew we had baseball before then, but I really didn't have much of a chance to play. But I think I started playing baseball at about 12 years old.
Did y'all, for your baseball, what did you use? Was it same as it is now? or was it different?
No, it was pretty well different. I mean, it was the same as it is now. I mean, it was, we actually had Little League then, and so I started playing Little League baseball. And at first, I don't believe we had batting helmets, but we soon had to have them because of safety reasons. But they were pretty inefficient at that point.
What about the gloves that you catch with, or the bats? Did they need to?
Well, we used wood bats. Aluminum bats haven't been developed at that point. So all of the baseball bats were wooden, and the gloves were pretty small and shabby, but they worked. You could catch a baseball with them. So.
Okay, well, that's it.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it.